Hello and welcome to the Sonic Cinema Podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle. Thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com, as well as the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel. Joining me today, I'm pleased to be talking with a filmmaker I've gotten to know over the past couple of years online through reviewing a couple of his short films as well as a web series that he's done. And we're also going to be discussing one of the movies for the class of 1999. And but first, I wanted to get a quick introduction and interview in with Chad Meisenheimer. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get into the crux of things, how did you first get into filmmaking?
Um, it's been a weird trajectory. Because I knew I wanted to make movies when I was like 7 years old. Like I saw Alfred Hitchcock Psycho, and I was just like obsessed. Like I knew it was fake already. Like I could tell it was just a movie. And what's the funniest story out of it was I was at my grandparents' house, and my grandfather fell when it came on.
Mm-hmm.
So when the shower scene came on, my grandmother walked in and she started screaming and yelling at my grandfather. And what's going on? And I was just like, I want to get reactions like that from people. And that's kind of been my whole like goal in life and in my creative side of things. And then I started acting because I was like from a diverse neighborhood in Northern California. So I knew I wouldn't be able to I had no Hollywood connections or funds to go to a big film school. So I kind of had like okay, my trajectory has to be acting to get into directing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of started doing it. And then I graduated high school early. I was graduating when I was 15, and then I was like, you have to be 18 over to do acting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I was community college, studied film and television production, got my AA, and kind of like that way, and kind of build my career off of that.
Okay. You mentioned Alfred Hitchcock and Psycho. Who were some of the inspirations for you as a filmmaker?
I was such a weird kid because I grew up watching those older movies. Because when I was younger childhood, I used to go to my grandparents all the time. And when I was younger, back then, because it was in the 80s and even the early 90s, there's only like three channels pretty much in Fox
Right.
early 90s. But it was like I would go over and watch like TMC and AMC when they actually play movies. So a lot of my inspiration for like older filmmakers like Alfred Hitchcock, Sam Peckinpah, Fritz Lang was also a really big influence. Laurel and Hardy was like a big one. Buster Keaton, Frank Capra, like John Huston, John Ford. So like movies like that. I grew up watching those movies, so I kind of had like a good encyclopedia already before. Because I was never into Disney movies. I was never kid movies. So I was always kind of that weird person who's always around adults watching like old like movies with Jimmy Stewart and acting. I was like, oh, I want to be like these guys. And I'm like, these guys are like old and dead. And I was like, be like that. And that's what inspired me.
Where you? I've seen a couple of your shorts. I've seen Night Night, which is more of a horror one, as well as Check Please, which is more comedic. You mentioned some filmmakers, Fritz Lang, Alfred Hitchcock, John Huston, Buster Keaton. As far as Frank Capra, when you go into making movie, especially something like Night Night, which is very much horror as opposed to comedy, which Check Please and Disgruntled, your web series, are. Where what is the what was sort of the inspiration behind making that movie, and sort of why did you decide to go horror as opposed to comedy?
Well, because like it's weird because when I started out my early filmmaking days, I call it the early days, from like 19 to 23, I was into like neo noir. I was compared to like Quentin Tarantino and like Nick Gomez. Like I was like that style of films. Like I like that crime drama element because I kind of went to that direction, and I also produced a lot of movies then, because I started as a producer too, where I was producing a lot of horror films. So I was doing a lot of genre stuff beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, okay, I kind of was like pulled in that direction, and then I moved to LA, was here for about a year, and then moved back up to NorCal, and I was just like burnt out on the film industry and stuff. I was like, I'm just gonna focus on stand-up comedy from like 2010, like 2013. All I did was stand-up comedy. Like that's how I was making my living.
Okay.
But what really pulled me into it was Tommy, who was the lead actress in the movie at the time. She was still living in North Hollywood, and she was talking like, because I was getting burnt out on the business, and I was just like, my comedy stuff, because like I just got like turned down from SNL, and I was like doing all these different things, like above average is like a website that goes to SNL, and I got turned down. And a lot of the comedy stuff, I would get like to like the final stages of like actual companies, but they're like, you're not viable, you're not financially viable to us, you didn't go through the Groundlings or Second City, and I was just like, okay, that's BS, whatever. And I was kind of burnt out. Like I was burnt out, and Tommy was like, "Well, you started out in horror genre. Why not like you produced like all this stuff? You have a good encyclopedia of knowledge of these films. Why don't you make it?" And because I did write Night Night as like a horror, part of a horror trilogy, like short films. And she read them, and she's like, "These are good," because I wasn't even a film. I just wrote them because I just wanted to have like different like genres of scripts. And she's like, "These are really good. Let's do one of these." And I was like, "All right, let's do Night Night," because I was like the 1980s, and it would be a challenge for me. And that's the reason why I did it. I kind of like was drawn to that script.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that's always so interesting about horror and comedy is that they're the two genres that are really the most subjective when it comes to personal perception. Like, obviously, something that's funny to one person is not going to be funny to another person. Similarly, something that's scary to one person is not going to be scary to another. So much of what those genres, the success of those genres reside entirely on how the audience reacts in the moment rather than how they necessarily think about afterwards.
See, that's what I always liked, because I always liked the challenge. Like, even when I started, like when I did stand up and stuff like that, I like pushing the envelope and see. I like getting reactions out of people. Like, I want to. That's always been my thing, where people are like, "Oh my goodness, he said this or he said that," and I kind of like don't care what people think per se, because it's just a persona to me.
Right.
Like Chad Meisenheimer, the person, I think is probably the boringest. Like, I just rather like Netflix and chill by myself eating cheesecake. Like, that's Chad. But like Chad Meisenheimer, the comedian, Chad Meisenheimer, the filmmaker, the writer, the actor, or the producer, it's just like different personas and perspectives. Sometimes they kind of blend together and people get really confused. Like, I notice a lot, like I have a very like niche demographic that I have, and I have fans and followers of my stuff. Not like huge, but I have like 3,000 people on Twitter and like 2,000 on like really like my stuff. Like a lot of like people like it. A lot of industry people are like, "What can we do with you?" Because I've fired agents that they didn't know what to do with me. They're like, "You're funny, but you could also be this and that." And I'm like, "Yeah, just put me out there." And they kind of never kind of figured out how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's move to Disgruntled a little bit. The web series that you did, and this is sort of going to tie into the movie that we're going to talk about for the Class of 1999 series, which is Mike Judge's Office Space. Other than Office Space, was there particular real world experiences that you had that influenced when you were making Disgruntled?
There was a couple of influences. Like, I used to work in customer service, like a newspaper, like in the office, where it's like we deal with customers and stuff. So I kind of like picked up like inspiration from that. I also had a lot of friends who also worked in office jobs and stuff, and they would just tell me all these horror stories. And I was just like, oh, that'd be kind of interesting. I kind of like picked and choose kind of ideas that I could do. Like a lot of people compared it to like Because Office Space is like one of the big influences of it, and a lot of people compared it to like Workaholics, or this British comedy. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
IT Crowd was another one that was like that, and then someone also mentioned like this British comedy called Spaced, which was by Edgar Wright.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people like saw little influences here and there from those stuff too. So it was kind of like a big melting pot of ideas and influences.
Okay. Where can people find your films and Disgruntled online?
They could probably find it. It's on YouTube, but I kind of like stay away from YouTube because I used to work on YouTube, so I'm kind of like get away from. They could find my work, all my work actually, on Vimeo.com/ Chad Meisenheimer, my whole name. That's where all my short films and everything all in one place. Like even my sketch comedy and all that stuff. So they could also do YouTube, which is / I think Disgruntled the web series. That's just the / if you go to YouTube. But I would always recommend people go to Vimeo, like www.vimeo.com /
Mm-hmm.
That's
So, with that being said, let's go ahead and the movie from 1999 that we're going to be discussing is Mike Judge's Office Space, and that was definitely, and as I alluded to earlier, that was definitely one of the main things I thought about when I first started watching Disgruntled. And I think when we first talking about Office Space, that's when you brought up
reference.
Disgruntled for me to watch and sent me the link to it. When did you first watch Office Space?
I saw it the first time it came out in '99. I was about 14, almost 15, and I was like, at first when I saw it, I was like, this movie's whack, like absurd. And I was just like, wow. So it took me. I saw it on video or DVD, I should say, a couple of years later, and I'm like, then I kind of realized I related to it. I was like, oh, I can relate to that. And then I watch it every so often, every few years. And it's like it ages so well because you're so relatable to all
Mm-hmm.
every age. Like in my 20s, it relates to a certain character. In my 30s, it relates to a certain character. So that's how I saw it. I was like, kind of. Oh, and plus, I've always been a big fan of Mike Judge. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the funny thing is, it's like I was familiar with Mike Judge to a certain extent with Beavis and Butthead. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I mean, I enjoyed it to a certain extent when I was growing up, starting to watch MTV, and then I ended up seeing the movie, which was a good movie, actually. I mean, a lot of people kind of forget that Beavis and Butthead Do America is kind of an entertaining movie.
Yeah.
Um,
I just remember Demi Moore being one of the voices in it.
yes.
That's how I remember.
But yeah, I had never seen the Milton shorts.
You see, because I'm such a big fan of comedy, because in the early '90s, it was actually in animation during SNL.
Yes.
Because that's what they were like. That's how I got it first. Was like I saw it and I was just like this is such a weird animation, because like I like weird things, and it was so different because the animation style is very unique in its own.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then my friend who was obsessed with like MTV, like music videos and animation, because he went into animation and stuff. I would watch it because those shorts were showing before like Beavis and Butthead, and I was just like, oh wow. So when he like quit doing Beavis and Butthead and went to do King of the Hill, I was like, oh, similar style. And if you watch King of the Hill, you can see some of the influences from Beavis and Butthead characters.
Yeah. So it's funny because you and I both saw it in theaters. You saw it when you were 14 or 15 in theaters. I saw it. I was about 21 when it was out in theaters. And I remember my mom and I going to see it, and we just absolutely lost it. We loved it. It was, and this is, I was still in college at the time at Georgia State, and it was funny because this was when I was really getting into movie, and I was really into movies, and it's like a lot of people knew that I was into movies, so I would talk to people about movies and stuff like that, and this one would come up, and it was a weird time at the school music where I was studying because of the fact that we were transitioning from quarters to semesters and stuff like that. And it was funny, like hearing some of the faculty at the time really identifying with Office Space based on their experiences with regards to being in the workforce and stuff like that, and just things that they were noticing at the school music.
Mhm.
And I mean,
Because it's like it's real relatable. Like
yeah,
the scene stuck in traffic at the beginning of the movie where he's like, stuck in traffic and he's trying to switch lanes, and the old man like in a walker walking by like faster than he is, like the traffic, and then yeah, it's just like there's so many things where you're listening to your radio and getting mad at traffic. It's like even like that. It's just like every little like I always saw a movie in like vignettes in a way because it's like yeah, it has generic plot, like very simple plot. But if you look at it and kind of break it down, it's almost all vignettes, all segments put together, and like of course it all flow together, but it's all almost like segments in the way. Think about it.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about what Mike Judge does is that he has this overarching story about he's got this overarching story with Ron Livingston's character, but but like you said, and I didn't even think about the fact that it's basically all broken into vignettes, and it's like it really that actually makes a lot of sense because you've got the opening scene, the commute to work, then you've got the opening, and then the next scene is them getting to work, and it's Monday, and so you have the dog day, the days of the slog of Monday going back to work after the weekend, and then you have the bosses who are coming to check up on stuff that you may have done wrong and stuff like that, and you've got so many people coming to tell you, and it's like even at my full-time job, it's like you said, it's extremely relatable. Even if you've never been in that particular type of setting, it's like there are always moments that remind you of Office Space.
Yeah, it's like, even like the restaurant scenes, because like I can relate to that even now because my part-time job, I work in food service. Like when I'm between gigs, like having the flair, the scenes of the flair, you always have that where like, oh, you're like, oh, because like they wear, they don't call it flair at my job, but they have all their hats and stuff, and it's like, oh, you want to like, oh, like shiny and that stuff, like, and I'm like, and even like if you go to Starbucks, you can see it now. Whereas it's one like I go to Starbucks all the time, and there's like people wearing flair now. I'm like, so everyone can relate, whatever field you work in, like from office, food service, even like therapy scenes and the hypnotist. Like I'm sitting there, I'm like, it's totally relatable. You have like the girlfriend issues, and then you have like the always the nosy room, like not roommate, but next door neighbor.
Yeah.
So it's like he always has a pulse to like society and like most of the mundane stuff in life, and he finds the humor and the irony in it. That's what I love about him.
Well, and the thing about the neighbor and Diedrich Bader is hilarious in that role is that, I mean, that's basically the idea of being in this apartment complex where like the walls are so thin that like you really have no privacy in your own home.
It's pretty much like it's like LA. Like my next door neighbor speaks Russian, you could hear them right next door. They're talking Russian the whole time. It's like it's relatable.
Peter the Ron Livingston characters, it's really interesting because of the fact that even at the time, like I even at the time I there's a certain kinship. I mean, I know this has been discussed by other people with regards to this movie, but just in 1999 in general, one of the things that's so interesting about this year, apart from just the amazing filmmakers that were putting out stuff and made movies at this time, is that you have a lot of movies. I mean, I've always kind of bunched this, Fight Club, and American Beauty in the same category, where it's like they're basically all about men who have sort of, the main characters are men who've all been sort of desensitized by the lives that they've built for themselves, even though that life is basically
very
what
Gen
you.
X.
Hmm?
It's very Gen X. So, because like
Yeah.
I think like the Generation X, where they were getting very like they're getting older and they're having kids and stuff like that. So you could tell there was like an interesting time during that, because like I love history, where it's like seeing where culture changes, because this is also pre Y2K
Yeah.
and all paranoia, and then all of a sudden like pre like World Trade Center and September 11th. So it was a very different time. Like the 90s was 99 was a really interesting year.
Yeah. Well, and with these characters, it's like all of these characters, they've all basically accomplished, what society has said that they're supposed to accomplish in life, but they still feel empty. There's still something about their lives that feels empty. And it's like Peter feels that way about his job. Lester Burnham feels that way about his life. The narrator in Fight Club feels that way about that life, his life. And then all of them have these moments where something just changes their perception. And for Peter, in this case, it's going to the occupational hypnotherapist with his girlfriend who's trying to get him to sort of help fix their relationship. But really, what he's basically in the middle of being hypnotized when the hypnotherapist keels over. And so and so he basically goes into this trance where it's like and he's just he's very zen about what he wants to do and how he wants to do it, and he just has this readjustment of his perspective.
Mhm.
And all of those characters all have that in very different ways. And in this movie, and they're all sort of tied into female characters that they interact with. In Fight Club, it's Marla, and American Beauty, it's Maya Severi's character, and this one, to a certain extent, it's Jennifer Aniston's character, who is sort of he gets, while he's basically sort of his job situation goes in a completely different direction when that you don't necessarily expect it to, and but he has this confidence to do things that he wouldn't necessarily have done previously
Very true.
to make his life feel better. And Joanne sort of, in a way, Joanne sort of, Jennifer Aniston's character sort of represents that for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's funny because I could relate to that character so much now, because like I'm like 34, and it's like you're dealing with like a lot of the stuff he's dealing with right now. I'm dealing with right now, so I'm sitting there.
Yeah.
I'm like where's this?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, it's like one of the things I really, one of the funniest things is when in his office life, basically his company is basically going through a restructuring where it's like they're bringing in consultants to see who's expendable and who's not, and it's like it's basically, and heck, I mean, the place I work at just went through this as well, and
Same.
not exactly with, we didn't have people with the bobs coming in, but at the same time, it was the same basic idea where it's like, okay, so here's how this is going to change, and this is what we're going to do, and it's like how are we going to try and make things for us more efficient, even if it doesn't necessarily translate to uh, real efficiency on the ground level. What's shoot? I don't have it in front of me. What's the actor? Who's the actor who plays Lumberg? Gary Cole.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got his name. Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
He.
he's like the so corporate America boss.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like I'm profoundly grateful I've never had a boss like him. But
I've had.
I mean, I not exactly like him. I have had bosses where it's like every time they say something, it's like you just they weren't quite as unsufferable as Lumberg is, so it's like they're better than that, but it's like it's still at the point of basically micromanaging everything into oblivion, and it's like yeah.
I had a like with one job just like years ago. Like I have female version of him, like almost the same way. She talked the same way, and I'm just sitting there like laughing to myself in my cubicle, like. And she probably thought I was like a nutcase.
Yeah. What was it? What was it? So we talked a little bit. We talked earlier about our first experiences with the movie. What I mean, and we've sort of talked about it, as going through the story as far as like what sort of stood out to us. And for you personally, watching this movie, what are some of the things that have most that you've most identified with as far as watching the movie?
I just like because like the relationships between the coworkers definitely because I've always been like I personally relate it to the coworkers like how they hate like certain things like a printer. Oh my god, like
Yeah.
when you have to, like it's not I mean like that because I worked in food service for so many years too, where there's a certain equipment just like oh why do we have this equipment? It's like it's always broken, and I worked in offices where things like we had a fax machine that would like go berserk, and then it's just like when they beat up the printer in that field to steal by Ghetto Boys, I would start laughing. I was just like, oh my goodness, I can relate to this so much. Where like they're stomping in and curb stomping, like just like that cracked me up.
Yeah, I've definitely had equipment like that. That it's like it's always
Every
broken.
every job, and it's like these companies afford new equipment, but they want like this outdated to save a quick buck.
Yeah.
And I'm oh, right
And
now we have monitors. It's just like at work. It's just like I always make jokes like, "Oh, our system runs on DOS." You're like, "What?"
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, especially the scene where they break up, where they destroy the printer. It's that's such an iconic moment, and it's like, but the fact of the matter is, the way that the movie uses rap in general is very iconic, and
Oh
part of it is because of just how very white these people are,
yeah.
and it's like that's why they think they're
First
really
scene when David Herman's like he's listening to
yeah.
rap. I forget his character's name, but it's just like
Michael Bolton.
It's Mike. That's right, Michael Bolton, or Mike Bolton. Mike
Yeah.
Bolton. Mike. He goes and when he's rapping and that guy coming toward him, he like rolls his window up, knocks the door. I'm like, oh, that's so hits the nail on the head. Like it had such like I wish more people saw this movie like because the movie could still work today. That's what cracked. Like it, like Mike Judge, like I said, had such a good like sense of irony. Like his stuff always works because he finds stuff in the mundane stuff.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's the thing about really good satires that it does age extremely well. I mean Office Space still does. It's still an absolute riot to watch this movie, and it's like because I don't even necessarily need to rewatch this movie to talk about it. It's like I've seen it so many times, and it's so much in my memory. Like every like so many lines are just incredibly memorable. Like Michael Bolton just being grilled by the Bobs, and they're like, "Is that your real name? Is there any relation to the singer? Because you have the exact same name as somebody. You must be related." Um,
or like always like because there's always that one person when they know something bad, like, oh yeah, I love his music, or like talk like that he's listening up to them, like, oh yeah, I love Michael Bolton music, and he's like, I hate it.
Well, he has to go with it because he feels like it's like that might help him to hold on to his job, and he's like, I guess I kind of like them all. I guess I kind of like am a fan of everything, and it's like, and yeah, it's
I wish they would make a sequel to it, because I would like to see, like, because like like a lot of the stuff came from the Milton character, like the shorts, but because it wouldn't make a feature. But I would love to see what happens more to Milton, like, because he's at the island now on the beach drinking like the money and everything. Like, I would like to see something like they follow up that, because that character was interesting to me too, where it's like stapler, taking a stapler.
oh,
stapler.
absolutely. Well, and the funny thing is, it's like while Peter and Najir and Michael Bolton have this whole idea of how they're going to scam the company, basically using the same plot of Superman 3, you have Milton, who's basically on the periphery, and it's like basically he's can continually screwed by the company, and it's like they just don't want to tell him, be honest with him. It's a perfect representation of just companies or people just not wanting to be honest with you, and and just feeling like, oh, it'll work itself out, it's okay. It's like he'll get the idea. It's like, yeah, we're just not gonna pay him, so it'll work itself out, except it doesn't. But it's like, but Milton is such a fantastic character, and Stephen Root is hilarious in the role. And it's just this ticking clock. It's like you just know it's funny at first, where it's like you can, I'm gonna set the building on fire and stuff like that, and but you also sort of get this sense as like, if if something doesn't happen, this is going to expand into something.
Exactly, like that, the postal worker. But it was like the casting. That's the thing too. A lot of people don't do. It's like, yeah, the writing was really good, the directing was good, but a lot of it's the casting too.
Oh yeah.
If it wasn't for the casting, the movie might have been different. Like, Ron Livingston was brilliantly cast.
Mhm.
Stephen Root was brilliantly cast. Like, so it was just like, it was a really well cast movie.
Yeah, and John C. McGinley and Paul Wilson as the Bobs are just hilarious. And it's like, it's so funny seeing McGinley, because I've seen McGinley in so many different roles and stuff like that. It's like, it's to a certain. I mean, I never watched Scrubs,
Oh,
but
I
it's
love.
like I know he's supposed to be hilarious on that show, and it's like, it doesn't surprise me based on his role in Office Space here. And then
because he gets like, what's funny, because if you look at his career, a lot of his career is like heavy roles, like action movies
Yeah.
and stuff. So kind of like nice to see him in things that like, because he's really funny. Like Scrubs, I watch it. Like, he is the show. Like, everyone says Zach Braff is, but like, he is the show. Even like, because like that's sort of first thing that even turned me on to John C. McGinley. Like, I knew his work and stuff beforehand, but I was like, I feel like he stole every scene he was in Office Space.
Mhm.
Like, he was perfect for it.
Well, I think Mike Judge plays Jennifer Aniston's boss, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's just got this perfect demeanor about him, about the, it's like, I mean, we want you to be able to express yourself, and if you feel like that's, if
the bare minimum,
the bare minimum, then we encourage that. It's like, so more than, so more. It's like, well, and oh my god, it's so like, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's completely relatable, regardless, especially if you've been in food industry and stuff like that, or dealing with customers on a regular basis.
Exactly. Very, very. It's like, I've been dealing with customers on and off again for like food service for 10 years. That's why I was like sitting there like, that's what relate. Like, because I rewatched it, like, what was it, like 6 months ago? I think I rewatched it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was sitting there like watching this, like, because I remember the Office stuff. Because like, I'm sitting like, okay, so there, and I was just like, the food service sequence is like, oh my goodness, I can relate to that right now. And I totally get the Jennifer Aniston character. I was just like, man, dealing with the customers and the boss, but like, because like my boss even does that now, where it's just like, well, you can wear a couple pins and stuff, you know, express yourself, you know, be corporate this, and like you want people to think they're part of the community, and then almost like you're a corporation pizza place. I'm like, we just like here, go taste, run.
Yeah, basically. I mean, Jennifer Aniston's really good in this role. It's like you really see, like, she really, you could tell in movies like this that it's like she was more than just Rachel and Friends.
Yeah,
Like, there was real talent there.
Because like that's what one of the things. Because I watch Friends. I'm not a big Friends fan. I sit there and rewatch it now and I kind of laugh and still watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But and a lot of people give Aniston like crap because a lot of her work is kind of like mediocre. And I'm like, I think it's because she picks crappy scripts. Like I don't think it's. But like this one, she was really good in. Like when she does indie stuff, sort of like smaller stuff.
Yeah.
Like really good. Like this last Netflix movie I watched with her and Adam Sandler, she was really good in it.
Yeah, she was.
Wow, really acting. I'm like, she's acting. It's like I don't know why certain roles where it's just like they just want her to play that Rachel character. Like that's why. But there's certain things where she did like she could actually act, and that's kind of the first time I was like, oh, okay, maybe there's something good about this actress to kind of watch because like at the time I was like 14, 15, and Friends. I was just like Friends is like, it's like okay. I was like I was relating more to Seinfeld more than Friends. They're almost like,
yeah.
But she really well cast. I was really surprised. You saw something in her. Do it.
I mean, it's a very simple role. It's just like she's basically the love interest. But you see her little arc as well with regards to her job. And it's like, I think that's one of the great things that Mike Judge does in this film is that it gives you, not only does it give you a little bit more bounce in order to flesh out the story as a whole, but it's also another way of allowing the audience to feel like, even if you've never been in an office job, if you've been in a customer service job where you're dealing with the service in retail or in the food industry or whatever, it's like, and you definitely feel represented there too. And it's like even though obviously that restaurant's supposed to be TGI Fridays. Satire TGI Fridays, but it could be any restaurant. It could be any food industry job.
Pretty much, like exactly, because like that's what's funny because like how I can relate to now, where it's just like I go to Starbucks every day, and they actually make their employees wear like little pins and stuff in their hats now. Like they want. Like I started laughing at it because like one of my friends worked there. I was like, "Oh, Flair," and he's like, "Flair." I'm like, "Yeah, watch Office Space."
Well,
over.
Well, it's funny because of the fact that like, so I work at a movie theater, which I try not to talk about on here too much for obvious reasons. But the fact of the matter is, it's like one of the things that we get to do is we get to put our favorite movie on there, and it's like, okay, so. Does it matter to the customer that I mean, I guess that's a little piece of flair or something. It's something similar where it's like, oh, you get to express yourself. And it's funny, my general manager actually he had this great idea. It's like he actually got separate. He got two different name tags, one which with a different movie, sort of like determine whichever one he chooses depends on his mood that day. It's like, oh, I'm gonna pick this one if I'm feeling this way. If I'm gonna pick this one another way, it's like that's actually a pretty smart idea. I like that.
Yeah, actually, because like I used to work at a movie theater and I used to do that too. But I was just like, I was always like, I always think I felt like because like the Ron Livingston character, because like in my 20s I was so much like that. Where I didn't give a crap. Where I worked at this movie theater from like 2008 to 2009. We had to do the thing. What I did is I put my own movie on it. And And my bosses would get mad. It's like, what movie? I'm like, it's my movie. You can see my movie at this website. And they're like, and I would do that to customers. Even see my movie, and then they come back. Look, we really liked your movie. And my boss was like, you can't do that. I'm like, you said you wanted me to wear the thing. So I've always been like kind of like that sarcastic, snarky person where I was like,
right.
I always that. I was like, oh, and that's why I always laugh about it now, because I was so like that. And I actually got promoted to like supervisor during that. Like that's how I relate. I'm like, wow. I'm like, because usually I'll stay at a job for like 3 to 6 months and just like book. And I'm like, but it's like, but they're like, yeah, everyone likes you. Did everyone put you as supervisor? I'm like, no. And this was like a big movie theater. Like we had like 200 employees, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, crap, I gotta do responsibility now. I'm like,
I definitely preferred my time in projection more than on the floor in customer service and stuff like that, just because it's just me and the projectors, and it's like I didn't have to deal with the customers on a regular basis and stuff like that.
Customers though, like, because I could like interact with them, because I'm like a like, even though I'm like, everyone's like laughing because I kind of am an introvert, but I'm an extrovert by nature for like my career film.
Mm-hmm.
I just like, I like people where like I almost did projection. Do you build up the reels, or you guys do hard drives now?
Well, it's all digital, so we don't actually have a projectionist up in the booth anymore. So it's fully automated.
Yeah, because there's some like theaters around here in LA. It's still, you have to put those together.
I miss those days so much. I really do. I mean, and the thing is, it's like I still like build the prints and stuff like that. I still do all that stuff, but I mean, I took to digital projection as well as I could, but it's like the fact of the matter is, it's like you really miss the solitude of 35 millimeter and stuff like that, and it was nice feeling, it's like, and it's much more gratifying to successfully build a 35 millimeter print than a digital print where it's like, oh hey, I'm just pointing and clicking and dropping and dragging and stuff like that. Hey, look, that's it.
Like, I missed the cigarette burns. Like, I really do. It's like, cause that's the where I'm like, I know it sounds kind of nerdy, but that's what I always love about movie theaters. It's like the old school. You sit there and the cigarette burns. Like, oh, I have to change the reel. Okay, fine. It's like, yeah, because there's like some stuff. Because like I remember I was working at the ArcLight, and that's like, it's like this really big luxury theater, and because they still technically do reels. They still do 35.
Right.
They have, because they want to be like the hip,
Yeah.
You're paying $19 to see a movie, so we're going to give you that movie experience.
Yeah, exactly. But no, and you point out something that we hadn't talked about yet, which is basically Peter's promotion in the company after his sort of his. I don't know if you could necessarily call the spiritual awakening, because he kind of zones out after the hypnotherapist dies, but he basically, the idea, I mean, that's another level of irony that is just hilarious to Mike Judge that he pulls off so well, and the fact that he makes our main character is hilarious. The fact that it's like our main character basically gets to the point where it's like, I'm just not gonna do that, but when he's completely honest with the Bobs about how he feels, it's like, oh, you know what? That's somebody we need, and that's somebody we need at the company.
You see, and what's funny, and it's so relatable. Everyone like left like, oh, that would never happen. It does happen.
Yeah.
Like I just explained to you, I got like promoted to the thing, and like the one boss didn't like me, but his bosses like me. I'm just like, so it's really relatable. Like, I've also seen jobs where I worked at, and it has happened where you sit there and I'm like, wow, okay, how are they getting? It's like no relations or anything. It's just like they're like, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah. And you think, oh, what they need is more motivation and da da da. They need more responsibility. It might make them a bigger team player. We need leaders. Yeah. So it's like corporate speak, and I just like start laughing where it's like, wow.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's so much of that. It's like, Yeah, that's not gonna do it. You know, it's like I can try to motivate our employees as much as possible. It's like unless there's like significant changes that are happening, though, it's not gonna help.
No, no, no,
Like
no.
it's not really gonna work. So yeah,
You used to name my head for that. I always like that the promotion one.
yeah. It's like you get to you've been slacking off at work, haven't even been showing up. You get to keep your job. Actually, I've been promoted. What? It's like, yeah,
And it's always the ones who do work hard. You're like, wait, what? Like that's my crap. Like we're doing anything, and you get promoted.
yeah. But no, it's God, it's such a fun movie. It's always like it's always been a favorite of mine from this year. I mean, I recognize just how good and original it was. Like when we saw it in the theaters, it was always just such a fun
That's what
experience.
always, that's what always gets me like mad for like the Academy Awards and stuff. Was like they always skip over certain comedies. Like this should have been like nominated for something. Like
Yeah,
I'm just like, it was good. Like it was a well made movie. There was like certain like movies now where like if you look at like certain movies nowadays where like these $200, $300 movie like $1 million movies and you see like technical errors. Like there was nothing like there was like no flaws whatsoever.
yeah.
Like especially in the year '99, where a lot of the movies were well made then.
Oh
Because
yeah,
I was watching the new Power Rangers movie just for like shits and giggles, and there was a scene where the car is driving by and you see the camera crew right in the window.
yeah,
It's like I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait, this movie's like what, $200 million? I'm like, I don't know, but it's like hypothetically $200 million, and they couldn't freaking figure out how to like not get the crew and the camera caught in the window. I'm like,
yeah.
they didn't notice that.
Hmm.
So I always get mad, and like in '99, and like, and you have like, when you're talking about like Fight Club, like Fincher, like he's like he does all these technical stuff, and it still looks good.
Yeah,
Like like the CGI now in movies, like everyone like I'm gonna bag on Black Panther, where everyone was like praising Black Panther. The CGI was crap. But like you could tell it was CGI jumping around in buildings. I was just like, really, seriously?
yeah,
So I feel like even that, like I just feel like a lot of the older movies, there was a lot more art and craft into it. Now it's just like it's like a machine just popping out movies now, and
hmm,
you now it just feels like I'm not saying there's bad like they're not good movies out now. Like there is good movies, but it's just it feels like a machine.
yeah,
Like even the indie films nowadays, it's all like it's like a hipster word now. It's like companies, it's like low budget big movies. It's like low budget studio films now. But indie.
Well, no, and that's absolutely true. I mean, the indies right now have really taken the they've really taken the place of the mid to low tier studio films that like Office Space that the studios used to make on a regular
Exactly.
basis. It's like the major studios basically are handling blockbusters or production companies and stuff like that. The independent studios are basically doing the dramas and the mid-tier stuff, and then the stuff that used to be the purview of the independent studios is like you have to really search for it because it's not necessarily getting distribution.
Exactly. It's like it's all on streaming. You have to like go through all these streaming sites to try to find it now.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean this is I mean, and I as much as I love Office Space out, I mean I probably would have considered it for screenplay that year. That's
Screenplay.
such a good year though. That was
Yeah.
such a good year. It would have been so hard for it to get anything else because of just how strong the rest of the year was.
If they followed like the rules now, I think it would have been in one of the top 10 categories, like that
Yeah.
the top films. Like like if it was came out now, it's definitely gonna be like nominated for screenplay. I also really liked, even though it was like kind of low qualified, I really liked the production design. The
Yeah.
production design was good, editing.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like the sound mixing was even good. It's just like
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff, and like yeah, you're right. You had like American Beauty, and you had like Fight Club, so you had like big budget movies, but I felt like it didn't get the fair share because if I can remember correctly, it was a flop at the box office. Like no one saw it. Like I remember it was just me, my brother, and maybe 3 or 4 other people in the theater. Like it's kind of creepy that I remember because I'm like it was like some little rinky-dink movie theater in Fairfield, and I was like, it was like there wasn't that many people there, and it was like a Saturday afternoon. So
it was. I know it was opening weekend when my mom and I went, and I know which theater we went to, but yeah, it wasn't that busy, and it was because of the fact that it was just it didn't do well, and it's like, and it's weird because of the fact that it hindsight is always 2020. I mean, this movie obviously built over the years where it was a huge cult thing. And the thing about cult movies is you can't necessarily bring out a movie and say, "Oh, this is a cult movie." No, the audience has to do its work in doing that, and sometimes, unfortunately, that means it flops at the first when it comes out theatrically.
It's funny because I think that's if you think about it, that pretty much sums up Mike Judge's film career because all his films ended up being cult classics. Like if you think about it, like even his other 2 movies later, they weren't really box office hits.
Oh no!
Like now they're like, oh my goodness, they're like it's so relatable now. It's like, oh,
I don't remember if I ever saw Extract. I'd want to say I did.
Twice. I saw it.
But yeah, Idiocracy is a movie I definitely need to revisit because of it's like it's so relatable. It's so recognizable now as far as society.
Yeah. It's like if you it's like what was it, the president was a reality star or something, and even the movie and then also like the corporate corporations were like the big. Yeah. They were the ones that made the policy. I just remember that I was like, this is never going to happen. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember if he was reality TV. I mean, part of the point of that movie was that reality TV was basically devolving America at the time. Yeah. And I mean, basically, if I remember correctly, like Luke Wilson's an idiot who gets frozen and then, or he wakes up later in the future and basically he's the smartest person and he's still an idiot. Yeah. And it's like, yeah. And Terry Crews is the president in that, isn't he?
Yeah, because he's supposed to be like this big star or something. I don't remember what it did, but it was just like, that's why it's so relatable. I was like, oh my goodness, it could relate to like our current president. Where I was like, wow. And then all the corporations, the sponsors, like Gatorade, and then I was just like, oh wow. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to like Mike Judge's talent again, where he's always had a pulse on trends and where everything is, like on social. Where he's probably one of the best satirists out there. Mm-hmm. People don't give him credit. Like I don't even know what he's working on now. Like I know he was doing some TV show, but I would love to see him do more movies, but I don't think studios would give him the budget to do movies.
Oh no, I mean I feel like he would. I mean I think his Extract was
the last one. I think
but I'm trying to. I want to say it was Miramax or something like that. Like it was post Weinstein Miramax, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he would definitely have to go to like somebody like A24's studio like that would probably be the way he'd have to go.
Do it, even if they do like what's funny because they just don't do just horror stuff now. They're doing a lot. They're kind of like spanning different genres, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But I was just like, but yeah, it's like that's great. Well, like I can't say the title right now. But that movie was also really, really good. It was just like it deal a lot with once again workplace and he's selling out and all this different stuff. Where it's just like again, it's like relatable and like workers' comp and all these different things. Like once again, it's like it's relatable. Like all his movies, no matter how like extreme it sounds,
Mm-hmm.
it's relatable, and he finds the irony, all the like everything.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about and that's I mean that's the staying power of Office Space. Is like
Mm.
because of the fact that like you said he was ahead of the curve. He figured out sort of where things were trending and he made his movies sort of based on that. And it's like now you look at it 20 years ago, it's like there are very few people who don't identify with Office Space in one way or another.
Yeah, it's like even the kids I work with at my day job, they're like 18, 19, and they know Office Space. I sit here like, and the younger generation, I know this is because I sound old, they're dumb.
Yeah.
And, I'm not saying I'm just like I'm sitting here, I'm like gonna be like the old man, like get up my lawn, but they know Office Space.
Yeah.
Because I make references all the time to certain things, and they'd be like, "How? What's that? Oh, I don't get that. Oh, is that Disney Channel?" I'm like, "What?" And then like, and then the Office Space, they know Office Space. I'm sitting there, I'm like, "How you know this and not these other things?"
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean that's the staying power too. Like I mean even if you don't have that experience of an office job or a corporate job or a food retail job where it's like that's something that's very much in play in Office Space as far as the narrative, you still it's still an entertaining comedy.
Mhm.
It's still very funny comedy because of the characters, because of the situations they put themselves in, and just like we haven't talked a lot about the fact that it's like they the reference to Superman 3 where it's like, oh yeah, this is basically Superman 3. And like and I think that's the main reason anybody even knows Superman 3 exists at this point is because of Office Space.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, I haven't seen Office Superman 3. I guess it's sort of the same thing as Office Space. It's like, there's a little bit more to it, but
Definitely. And it's just like, and I just like I said, I wish more people like watch it. Like, well, it's already a cult classic, and it's like, but I
yeah.
was just like, I wish film schools would show it more. Like, they need to show more work like that, where it's just like everything's just like, yeah, it's cool to see, like the older movies and stuff, but just not Michael Bay movies.
Well, and the thing is, it's like you're bringing up a really great point as far as the production design, as far as the editing and the cinematography and stuff like and the sound mix for something like Office Space. It now, I mean, there's stylistic choices he makes
Oh,
as far as the slow motion and stuff like that that serve very specific purposes in the film, but for the most part, it's a very invisible movie from a technical standpoint.
oh yeah, and you see, and that's to me what makes a great filmmaker, because like sometimes filmmakers get like, oh, look at me, look at this camera, because like you forget that we're telling a story to the audience,
Yeah.
and he never loses that. That's what I like about it. It's like he's telling a story, he's keeping you entertained. He's not like, look at me, I'm cool, I'm making all these cool camera angles. I'm gonna put a Dutch angle here. You know, that's one thing I like about it. And like even his tongue in cheek reference, like when they're like beating up the printer in the field, that was a very MTV style kind of throwback to the early '90s with like the gangster like rap,
Yeah.
and then doing the slow motion like high kicks, and like he was making a reference, making fun of like the early '90s MTV,
Yeah.
because like was MTV was usually watched by white kids.
Yeah.
Like that's what it's like. That's why I laugh about it. I'm like, oh wow, he's making
Well,
that reference
well,
to
and the
that.
whole use of rap in that movie is completely tongue in cheek, satirical towards white people who listen to rap. And it's like it's like, yeah, just because you listen to rap doesn't mean you're that type of person. Doesn't
Exactly.
mean you live that lifestyle. And it's
Exactly.
like the way you live that lifestyle is like handing off the idea of this handing off a computer disk and stuff like that, thinking that's a big dramatic thing, and being up the printer. It's
Yeah.
like, I mean, grand, yeah, it's cool to look at, and we've all had those experiences. But at the same time, I mean, you don't look cool doing it. I mean, that's one of the funniest things where it's like you see like when Michael gets in on the printer, you see him slipping and all that stuff, and it's like, yeah, you're not as you're not as violent with this as you think you are.
Exactly. And what I like about it too is like I said, like we were talking about like the cinematography and editing, mixing and stuff. It was so spot on. Like that's what I'm saying. It's like it wasn't like I said, look at me, look at me. It was like it was incorporated in a working story. And I think that's why it also allows. Like Fight Club still, has like a big fall like Fight Club. Um, American Beauty. I really don't think a lot of people, like especially this generation, it really didn't age that well. Like I like it because I can
Yeah,
relate.
it still holds up reasonably well, but it's not necessarily something that people younger than us. That American Beauty is the type of movie. I mean, there are complicated feelings certainly to be had around it because of Kevin Spacey being in it, but at the same time, it's like American Beauty is to this generation like movies from the 40s and 50s and stuff like that, and that were Oscar winners, kind of are to sort of most of our generation.
Well, I believe that. Yeah, because Kevin Spacey is brilliant. Like I always don't get see, I can separate the person and the art. Like
Yeah.
I love it. Where it's just like I don't know why people are like, I'm gonna go see that movie. Like it's still a great movie. Like he was in the usual, like great movie. Seven, great movie.
Mhm.
Like I would watch any of his stuff because it's great art. Do I like the person? That's not my problem.
Yeah.
But it's just like I wish more people kind of figure out that too, where it's like they need to separate the people and the art.
Right. And I was actually, and the thing is, it's like when I was getting ready to rewatch American Beauty for this series, like I was actually kind of dreading the rewatch because I wasn't sure how, because of the way, because of this particular storyline he's involved in with Mia Saveri, it's like I wasn't sure how comfortable I was going to feel with that. But it's like rewatching it, I realized it's like, oh wait, there's a lot more to that story on both sides of that story than I remember. So it's like, yeah, it's still creepy because I mean it's still the Lolita vibe, but there's more to it than just older man young lusting after a younger girl. And it's like that's the type of thing that's the thing that really distinguishes a movie like American Beauty, even with the baggage that Kevin Spacey may bring to it as an individual. Like like you said, it's like there aren't like I'm still gonna watch his movies, but unless there's something that like really, unless there's something that like it would be hard for me to like talking about Bryan Singer for a little bit, and we're going off tangent for a little bit, but you know, Bryan Singer directed Usual Suspects, but it's like he also directed At Pupil, and based on what we sort of have heard about that production, that's a movie that even though I actually liked it at the time, I don't know that I will ever revisit, knowing sort of like that was a production that where allegedly Bryan Singer did some of his worst stuff.
Yeah,
and it's like
and
that's a different situation entirely.
Oh yeah, and you see, and once again, it's just like I'm like once again like what I'm like. Do I like the guy personally? I'm like no. Like I always separate the art from the or it's just like that movie. I watched that movie maybe twice, and I was like, okay, it's a dark effed up movie.
Yeah,
like that's a dark movie. And like he even directed what was it like Bohemian Rhapsody, which I guess he did like half of the work, like half of it before he did his little thing.
Yeah, so he did most of it, and then he got fired, and then the Dexter Fletcher, who actually directed Rocket Man, came on to finish it, and it's like the thing is though, it's like there Bohemian Rhapsody has other issues that have nothing to do with Bryan Singer as an individual.
Exactly. Exactly.
But no, I mean, the fact of the matter is, I have no problem watching Usual Suspects. I have no problem watching like his X-Men movies and stuff like that.
I noticed this. Did you watch his very first feature, Public Access?
It's been a while, but yes.
I love that movie. It's so dark and messed up. That movie, that is a dark movie. If you want to
yeah, it's been a while since I've rewatched that, but
it's so hard.
might try to rewatch that. I might try to revisit at some point, but
because it could also like if that was still out, that could even relate to now even like stuff. There's like because this guy used TV to like build the drama and like all the gossip. Like I just remember that movie. And it's just like it left an impression on me. And that movie too. I'm like, oof.
Yeah, I may need to rewatch that at some point. But did you have any more thoughts on Office Space before we wrap up?
Not anymore. No, I hit up pretty much everything I thought about it.
Yeah. Well, Chad, very nice to talk to you, and thank you very much for your time. And you can find his work on Vimeo, Vimeo. Just look up his name, Chad Meisenheimer, and it's really his stuff's really a lot of fun, and definitely recommend you checking it out. Chad, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Chad Meisenheimer for his time to talk about his career, talk about some of the films he's done over the years, as well as talk about Office Space, and contribute that to the class of 1999. I appreciate the indulgence with combining those two things, but when we talked about Disgruntled, I hope you saw the through line of why we decided to add the interview in with the larger discussion of Mike Judge's great film. That's it for me for the Sonic Cinema podcast for right now. Check me out on patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. And you'll get more Dragon Cons coming up, and that's going to bring a lot of content to the Patreon, and as well as some more early access reviews. There are some recent ones for Election that just got posted, and there are going to be some more for movies that are both going to be covered on the podcast as well as ones that aren't. For now, this is Brian Scuttle with Sonic Cinema, and thank you very much for joining me. We've got more of the class of 1999 as well as my Dragon Con breakdown, and that's going to do it for now. Thank you very much, and check us out at www.sonic-cinema.com as well as the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel. Thank you.